Chuck Holton here. How's it going? We are in Guam today. This is the beautiful backdrop that we woke up to this morning, got in late last night. And today we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff that's going on in the Middle East. And over later lives that I'll do this week, we'll talk more about why I'm here in Guam and what's going on here. But I mean, is this not sweet or what? I mean, what a great view that is. War is hell, but somebody has to serve in Guam. So here we are. You know, the life of war correspondent. It's just, I can say that this is definitely not up to my standards. But so I got a lot to talk about, and I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as I can. I'm going to, just one quick note, while I'm over here on the other side of the world, I'm 14 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time. And so it is now 8 o'clock in the morning over here on Wednesday. And so because of that, I'm going to be going live a little later than I normally do in the States. I'm going to go live first thing in the morning when I get up every morning. So usually it'll be between like 3 and 6 p.m. or something like that. And so just a programming note for those of you that are watching. And before we get started, just want to say, make sure that you hit the like button, everybody. It does make a difference. And when you hit that like button, it tells everybody, it tells YouTube to show this to everybody, and that's good for the channel. So it doesn't cost you anything, but it helps out the hot zone. Now, I want to know also, just answer in the chat, how many of you have ever been to Guam? I'm actually kind of surprised when I talk to people in the United States how many people have been here or even lived here, because it's basically a giant military base. And this almost, I think 90% of this island is a giant military base. They're adding more troops all the time because of the pending war with China. And they don't even have housing for them all. So this resort hotel that we're in here on the beach is absolutely packed with U.S. troops because they have nowhere else to put them. So if you've not been to Guam, it's an American not colony. It's an American, what am I trying to say, territory. So everything's in English. It's American food. It's American everything. But anyway, it might be worth a visit sometime. It's a long trip though. Took us long trip to get here. So let's start and talk about what's going on over in Israel. First of all, if you recall that I was talking about during the ceasefire, and every week when they had these big ceremonies in Gaza that were parading the hostages out and making them sign a little piece of paper, their little diploma for having been hostages and all that. And they had all these shiny white SUVs and pickup trucks lined up out there, the big Toyota, their Toyota RAV4s. I'm not RAV4s, they call them Hilux, the Toyota Hilux. And a lot of people were commenting on, like, where did all these brand new vehicles come from? I thought that Israel had been bombing Gaza for months. And that's true, but they had all been hidden underground, whatever. And I told you, I guarantee you, Israel is watching all those vehicles. They're tracking them from the sky. They're finding out where they go back to. And when this is all over and they go back to fighting, they're going to go just smoke every one of those vehicles. And folks, that's exactly what has happened. Israel announced yesterday that it has destroyed more than 100 of those trucks that were being used in those ceremonies already across Gaza. And so that's a good thing. They're hitting very hard in the south. So down in Rafah, the IDF troops have detained 30 Palestinian or Hamas operatives and killed 20 more just overnight. And they're expanding the buffer zone down there along the southern border. The Israelis are now saying they're floating this idea that, look, if we can't push all of the Gazans out of Gaza and we can't make them go somewhere else, then what we're going to do is we're going to give them a very small strip of land along the beach, and then the Israelis are going to come in. We're going to take and keep everything else. And that obviously is not making the people in Gaza happy. But what we're seeing now is that they are striking so hard in Gaza that the Palestinians themselves are coming and having protests against Hamas, waving white flags and trying to surrender to the IDF forces. So the people in Gaza have had just about enough of all of this destruction, but it's not over yet. The Hamas fighters yesterday released a video of 2 of the living hostages that are left, showing proof of life of those guys. They also said that the IDF has been recovering the bodies of hostages that died. The IDF says, no, we have not been recovering the bodies of any hostages. We would announce it if we did. And obviously they're using this as propaganda. These 2 hostages that they showed alive, obviously were begging for their lives, begging Israel, coerced, obviously, begging Israel to stop the violence, to stop bombing Gaza, and to do whatever it takes, including surrendering to Hamas in order to get them out of there. That's exactly what you would expect from a video like that, and that's commensurate with the kinds of videos that have been put out in the past with proof of life. But it's terribly, terribly painful for the Israelis, as you can imagine, right? I mean, it is just like sticking an ice pick in their heart every time that this happens. And this is why Israel has to continue the course and, again, putting the deterrence, putting the objective of deterring any other hostage taking ahead of even rescuing the current hostages. Meaning that those current hostages, yes, they're important, but yes, they want to get them back, and they're going to do whatever they can within reason to try to get them back, but they cannot do that at the expense of training Hamas to take more hostages. And so that's what we may likely see another ceasefire coming up and some more of those hostages being released, because Hamas is just getting its head handed to it right now. And they are at the negotiating table in Egypt talking sort of indirectly as usual about another ceasefire where they dribble out a few living hostages and dead ones at a time, while the the Israelis give over hundreds and hundreds of like Palestinian terrorists, right? So the UN now has stated that it is reducing its manpower in Gaza after some of its people were killed after the resumption of the fighting, and they were not killed by the IDF. A UN convoy was hit with an IED that was set by Hamas, and it killed and injured some of the people in the convoy. This was a clearly marked UN convoy, and the injured, the wounded never fails. As soon as I go live, somebody pulls out a chainsaw and starts cutting stuff up. But the IDF moved the wounded into Israel, took them to the hospital, started treating them. They sent out pictures of one of the UN aid workers, because when they took his clothes off to treat his injuries, he was covered with Nazi tattoos, anti-Israel tattoos. And so this is the kind of employees that the UN had in Gaza. And so the UN is like, look, there's no aid entering the strip right now, so we're just going to pull some of our people out. There were 4 more rockets fired at Israel over the last 24 hours, and this is by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and they were fired at the town of Sderot. Now, if you were with us on our tour to Israel back in October, we took you to Sderot. We took you to the overlook that looks down on Gaza, and we were able to look into Beit Hanun. and Jabalia and those areas inside Gaza, and watch the strikes taking place in there. They fired them. Nothing was struck. They were shot down. There was no injuries, no damage or anything like that. But Israel then immediately cordoned off the area inside Gaza, which was Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia, and some areas around Jabalia in northern Gaza, and then told all the people in there, all right, we're going to strike those areas. We're going to take out wherever the launches came from, so you all better get out. So they are now striking in those areas. The thing is, this is why it's so hard, because Israel feels the need to warn everybody before they strike something. That's a civilized thing to do. But when they do that, obviously it gives the bad guys, including the good guys, or civilians, I don't know if there are any good guys, but it gives everybody a chance to escape, take anything of value and get out. And this is why it's been a giant game of whack-a-mole in Gaza since the beginning. For those of you that are just coming on, we got more than 2,000 people online. I'm in Guam this morning. This is Wednesday morning in Guam, about 8 a.m. And I'm at, this is the Hilton in Tumon Bay, Guam. Beautiful, obviously. And no, that's not a green screen. That's real. Tumon Bay is actually over that way a little more. But we are here for the 80th anniversary of the battle for Iwo Jima. Later on, we're going to be making some reports about that battle and interviewing some of the survivors. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad. If you like that view behind me, hit the like button, would you? Go hit the like button on the video. I'll be talking more about Guam and why we're here and everything in the coming days, because we're going to be here for about a week, and I'll be bringing you a lot. You'll be learning a lot about Guam and the current military reason that we are adding like 5,000 to 8,000 more troops in Guam because of the upcoming war with China that everybody is sort of preparing for. All right, so overnight, the IDF also struck inside Lebanon. They took out another Hezbollah operative, the commander of their southern front, who was facilitating the movement of operatives and the supply of weapons into southern Lebanon. And so they're striking in Lebanon. They also struck in Syria, 2 airports in Palmyra and what they call the T4 airfield, which is in Homs district of Syria. That's the second time in 2 nights that the IDF has struck those things, those 2 different sites. They said at least 7 terrorists were killed by the IDF in Syria after they opened fire on Israeli forces. So the Israelis are not just randomly bombing stuff in Syria. They are bombing military targets, but they're also engaged in combat in Syria right now. So you've got Israeli troops still in combat in Gaza, still in combat in Lebanon, still in combat in Syria, and still in combat in Judea and Samaria. So those 4 areas. And then on top of that, there was another commander, Hassan Kamal Halawi, also known as Abu Ali, who was killed in Nabatea province in Lebanon he was the commander of the anti-tank unit for Hezbollah. So they're still tracking people down and giving them the old express train ticket to their 72 virgins in Lebanon. So they have not let up on Hezbollah. And this is why Hezbollah just is not much of a threat right now to Israel as far as firing rockets at Israel or anything like that. There have been just very few threats against Israel since the Operation Grim Reaper. They really did a number on them. Do you know you're welcome in Australia? Yeah, I'm sure I am welcome in Australia. You need to have a war down there for me to come to Australia. So you probably don't want to see me there. Or you could do like my friend Chris Anderson did, and set me up for a speech at your church, and then I will come speak anywhere in the world. And so I've had people in Australia do that before, and it didn't quite work out because of the pandemic. But I would love to go to Australia. If you got a church there and you want to set up a men's retreat or a church retreat or something like that, I will come and speak for your church. Just contact Miss Amy at info@holtonnews.com, and she'll pass that on to my speaker's agent, and I will come speak for your church. So again, please hit the subscribe button here, folks. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and go to chuckholton.com. I just posted a video of Palestinians in Gaza waving the white flag and surrendering to IDF troops, and saying that they're done with this war, they don't want to fight anymore, and they're ready to leave Gaza if necessary. So go watch that video over at chuckholton.com, and you can subscribe over there. You can become a supporter over there if you want to support the work that we're doing and keep us out in the field. You can do that over at chuckholton.com. All right, so in the West Bank, the IDF, Shin Bet, and Israeli police have arrested at least 18 people who were wanted persons over the last 24 hours. They also had an attempted ramming attack that resulted in them taking out another terrorist. And just over 24 hours ago, there was another shooting attack out of the West Bank that killed a 78-year-old Israeli man before the assailant himself was gunned down by an IDF soldier. So there's still a lot of operations going on in Judea and Samaria. They confiscated explosives and weapons and other devices during the overnight operations. That's according to the Jerusalem Post. They are talking about firing the Attorney General now in Israel. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of the internal politics, but suffice it to say, there have been a lot of protests over recent days against the firing of the Shin Bet director because he was a leftist. He was against actually going hard against the Palestinians. He was more like, we just need to give them a hug and do whatever we have to do to get our people back out of Gaza, which is a long-term strategy to get more people taken into Gaza. And so they fired him, and they are looking to fire the Attorney General now. There's been a lot of politicization or weaponization of the legal process in Israel, just like we've seen in the United States against President Trump. Do you think the protesters in Turkey will bring down Erdogan? No, I do not. There are large protests happening in Turkey right now, and I hope I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but if past is any judge, Erdogan just clamps down very, very hard on the protesters. They machine gun protesters, arrest tons of people all across the country, and Erdogan stays in power. Erdogan has weathered storms like this before. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see Erdogan taken out and a less jihadi government being put in Turkey. But the way things are going, even if they did take him out, it's likely that they would just replace him with another jihadi who might even be worse. Okay? Yeah, questions need to be in all caps, folks, if you want me to see them so I can answer them right away. Now, let's talk about the U.S. airstrikes in Yemen. Over the last 24 hours, the U.S. fighter jets have conducted 8 airstrikes inside Yemen and targeting Sana'a and Sada provinces. And according to the Houthis, that resulted in 1 casualty. They're only striking at night, in the middle of the night. They're only striking carefully selected military targets. And honestly, they're not doing anywhere near enough to actually move the needle. And that's evidenced by the fact that the Houthis have fired 6 different missiles at Israel in the last week. So essentially 1 a day. So the Houthis are just continuing to fire, and they fire, and then they move their launchers, and the United States tries to bomb the launchers. But the Houthis are giving the United States a real run for their money because the United States either is unwilling or unable to use the kind of shock and awe tactics that it would take to actually move the needle and put a stop to what the Houthis are doing. Now, they're moving more troops, more ships into the region. Pete Hegseth has given the command for more U.S. ships to move into the region. More F-35s are getting down there into the region. But all of that takes there's a time frame that it takes to spin it up and to do the planning and the rehearsals that are necessary to actually do some sort of coordinated, massive campaign against the Houthis. The thing is, like the Houthis, just like all terrorists, they hide in civilian areas and they use civilians as human shields. And the United States is far too civilized to just go randomly bombing civilian areas. And so in that way, the Houthis, because of their barbarity, are using our civilization against us, using our civility against us to survive and to continue to fire at Israel. And so the Houthis are claiming victory right now. You know, I mean, the United States has been bombing them every day, every single day for the last 10 days. And the United States is not really moving the needle. It's not doing much. Okay, so a bunch of questions going by here. Saudis kept hitting Houthis for years, trying to take down anti-air HVT, hitting their ballistic missiles for years. Will the U.S. be able to clear those missiles? Well, not unless they step it up several notches over where they are now. And I want to talk real quick. How far away is Iwo Jima from Guam? It's like a 3-hour flight. It's actually pretty far away. Is it better to have Erdogan in power? No, it's not better to have Erdogan in power. It would be better to take Erdogan out and put somebody in power who's actually friendly to the West. What do you make from the group chat text from Hegseth? Okay, that's what I wanted to talk about next. 707 Grammy asked that. So there was a Signal group chat that, if you haven't seen that in the news, that's the big news right now, that Pete Hegseth, J.D. Vance, there was like 6 people, all important people in the Trump administration, that were on this Signal chat. And they were just talking about various different things, right? Well, some idiot apparently accidentally added a very anti-Trump journalist to the group chat, this private group chat where they were literally sharing classified information about the strikes against the Houthis. And somebody stuck this journalist in the group chat. Now, the right thing for that journalist to do would have been to say, hey guys, I'm sure it was mistaken. You didn't mean to add me to this group chat, so I'm going to bow out here. And if he had done that, he probably could have gotten himself a lot of points, or he could have said, hey, I'm not going to publish the things you guys are putting out in here, and I'm going to leave the group chat. But in so doing, I think that I merit an interview with President Trump. And he would have gotten that interview. Okay, he would have gotten a direct interview with President Trump. Instead, what he did is just start putting out the stuff in the group chat. Now, he says he didn't put out anything that was classified, that he, didn't. He could have put out worse, but he didn't. So the texts that he did put out were not classified information. He says that there was classified information. We just have to take his word on that. Pete Hegseth, who is coming to Guam, by the way, tomorrow, said there was no classified information in that. He said our OPSEC is clean. Well, no, your OPSEC is not clean if you're adding a journalist to this, right? And to this group chat. Now, let's talk about what was said and what we can glean from what was said, because that is, the reading between the lines here is the most important takeaway from this group chat. Number one, the kinds of things they were talking about are the kinds of things that should be discussed, even if it wasn't classified, over secure government communications. Using a Signal chat just shows that these guys are kind of winging it. They're doing it on their own. And it might even show that they don't trust the government communications, and they think that Signal is more secure than their own internal government communications. And that actually could be true. They could actually be right about that, because there's obviously a lot of there's a lot of spies, there's a lot of hacking that goes on, and it would not surprise me if the Chinese or the Russians have zero-day exploits inside our government systems. And our government systems are usually a few years, like maybe 10 years behind the security of the private world. And so I'm not faulting them for using Signal, but nevertheless, that was a big mistake putting this guy on there. Now, let's talk about what they were talking about. They were discussing the attacks against the Houthis. And J.D. Vance was making statements like, well, I guess if we have to do this, let's go ahead and do it if you think it's worthwhile. I just can't stand, helping Europe, just, continuing to bail out Europe here. And honestly, just some minor criticism for J.D. Vance. I like J.D. Vance. I've read his book, and I think that he will make a good president someday. But he's really naive when it comes to foreign policy. And you get the sense from his comments, both in public and in private now, that J.D. Vance actually hates our allies more than he hates our enemies. And that's a really bad thing for the vice president of our country. Because for him to be constantly bashing our allies in Europe, I get it. We feel like we've been taken advantage of by our allies in Europe. That they've used our willingness to defend them to avoid having to spend money on their own defense. However, we haven't done that completely out of the goodness of our heart. There has been a lot of benefits to the United States for the defense in Europe that we have provided. And for the defense of the high seas, that helps. That is a net positive for the entire world, but especially for America. The more consumerist your country is, the more that your country consumes, the better off it's going to be for there to be freedom of navigation on the high seas. And since we are the #1 consumer nation on planet Earth, we have a vested interest in maintaining freedom of navigation on the high seas. And Vance, even though he went to Harvard, apparently doesn't understand that. Apparently doesn't get that. And he also doesn't get that Spain and France and Canada have also been stepping up to fight the Houthis already, and the UK as well. So maybe every country in Europe has not been down there fighting the Houthis, but a lot of European money has been spent to fight the Houthis, even before the United States really got that involved during the Biden administration. Okay? So this is such a clear, easy win for the United States, and Hegseth gets it, because it's not so much about, well, J.D. Vance is saying, well, most Americans don't even know who the Houthis are. And that's true. Most Americans are very uneducated in terms of foreign policy, but it's easy to paint Houthis as the Star Wars bad guys. And I think if you ask most Americans, even little kids, are the Houthis of Yemen good guys or bad guys? They'd say, probably bad guys. They know that much at least. They might not be able to tell you all about the history of Yemen or anything, but most people understand the Houthis are not our friends. And so what's more important than taking out the Houthis is the message that we send to the rest of the world by taking out the Houthis, right? It's the message that we send to Iran. It's the message that we send to Russia. It's the message that we send to China, that we are willing to go hard to keep people from committing these kinds of shenanigans around the world. And the fact that J.D. Vance seems to not understand that is very concerning, because I really would hope that our leaders would be smarter than that, would understand a little more about the second and third order effects of pure isolationism in America. And J.D. Vance is just apparently ignorant of that fact by his statements in those things. Now, Hegseth agrees. Hegseth is, trying to keep the peace. He's trying not to go against the vice president. That's his, kind of his boss. And, he definitely wants to hit the Houthis. But I think that might be why the United States has had sort of a lackluster response to date against the Houthis. We are striking, Paul Houghton says, who are you to judge? I'm a guy who spent 20 years outside the United States, traveling around covering wars and disasters, who spent 8 years in the United States military, and who is a lifelong student of history and a 10-year stockbroker who did nothing but research for 10 years. That's who I am. So the fact that I think I have a fairly good understanding of the second and third order effects of what we are doing, of our foreign policy, as I've watched, a half a dozen presidents come and go throughout my adult life. Okay, that's who I am. And I think I have every right to give you my opinion. That's why people come and watch me. If you don't want to hear my opinion, don't watch me. Go watch somebody else. Okay? So, and this is, again, this is one of those people that just loses their mind if you do anything to even slightly criticize somebody that's on their team. But see, I'm on their team. I'm on Team Trump. I'm on Team Vance. And you know what Team Trump and Team Vance desperately need? They need somebody like me who's going to go, guys, that was stupid. Don't do that. If they only have people who are going to go, great job, Mr. President, you're perfect, you're the Messiah, you're the most wonderful guy out there, and only be yes men, then we are going to make very, very bad decisions. Okay, and I don't want our country making damaging decisions. I care so much about America that I'm even willing to go against the people that I voted for and tell them when they are wrong. I've got the stones to do that. Let's hope that there's somebody in the U.S. government who has the stones to do that as well. Okay, that's enough of that. All right, now, on that note, President Trump sent a message to Iran giving them a deadline, giving them 2 months to come to the negotiating table to negotiate an end to the hostilities and an end to their nuclear their nuclear program. Immediately, Iran said, we're not negotiating. You're our enemy. Forget it. Now, since then, they have gone back channel and have reached out through Qatar and Egypt and other places and saying, well, we would be willing to negotiate indirectly with the United States, but we're not coming directly to the negotiating table, with the U.S. That's not going to happen. And there's not going to be any talk about us giving up our nuclear arms, and we're not going to stop supporting our proxies because they're not proxies. So Iran is like, no, we're not going to quit supporting these people because we don't have any control over what they do with all the hundreds of billions of dollars worth of weapons and drones and missiles and Iranian soldiers. We send them as advisors and ships that we send out there to help them target ships in the Red Sea. We don't have anything to do with all that. That's an accident. Okay. So they are not serious about negotiating. And so what we're going to need to see is the United States call their bluff. And I'm telling you, my opinion, I believe the United States will strike Iran sometime in the next couple of months. And because if we don't, President Trump is going to look so weak for threatening to bring hell on Iran and then not doing it. We should already be bringing hell on Iran. We should have done it before we even struck the Houthis. We should have started striking Iran. But President Trump is a negotiator. He's trying to negotiate his way out of this. And I think he's finding out that that's going to be a lot more challenging than he thought it would be. H says, what do you make of the video released by the IRGC of their self-proclaimed underground missile cities? And why would they publish it at this time? They've published a lot of videos like that over time. They do have large missile cities underground. What they're trying to say is there's no way you're going to bomb our nuclear program out of order. There's no way you're going to put it out of order because, and I said this yesterday on the live, or day before yesterday, how many days ago was that? I don't know. When I was in New York, that much of Iran's nuclear program is buried so deeply underground, there's no bomb on planet Earth that could reach it. You could drop a nuclear bomb on Iran and it would not reach the facilities that they have buried literally thousands of feet underground inside of mountains. They have had decades to build tons and tons of underground cities, and they have done that. They have invested a lot of money in doing that. As I said, we have these large bunker buster bombs. They're called massive ordnance penetrators that can go through more than 200 feet of rock and earth before they explode. But 200 feet is nothing when they've got stuff that's buried 2,000 feet underground. And but we could, the only way that we could likely take out Iran's nuclear program would be to take out the regime that is pushing the nuclear program, okay? That regime is the big problem, okay? If we just take out their facilities, they'll go build more facilities. If we take out the regime, then we hopefully will get a newer regime that's more friendly to the West. And so that is the easier of the two. Taking down the regime means just taking out their economic and industrial capability. We should strike their oil facilities. We should strike their gas facilities. Now, I mentioned before, if we strike their oil facilities, then we are likely abandoning Ukraine to lose the war in Ukraine, because if we bomb Iran's oil facilities, it will likely raise the cost of oil. If we raise the price of oil, that means that Russia has the ability now to continue funding the war. President Trump has a tightrope to walk here. He needs to try to reduce the price of oil, and reducing the price of oil will hurt Iran and will hurt Russia and will help China, actually. But 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So, whether or not we bomb, I don't think we would bomb Iran's oil facilities for that reason, but we could take out all their power. We could take out all their industrial base. We could take out all their government facilities. And we start doing that, boom, 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 boom. And that regime is already on shaky ground. We could likely wipe out the regime and replace them with somebody that's friendlier to the United States. All right, folks, we got almost 4,000 people online. And I am in, a lot of people are asking where I am. This is Guam. We just arrived here late last night after a marathon 40-hour travel day from the United States. And pretty nice, I have to say. You could do a whole lot worse than this. I'm gonna spend the rest of the day today swimming and running along the beach and trying to get some sun on my body. I'm not planning to wear a whole lot of clothes while I'm here. I'll promise you that. It is a beautiful, beautiful place, a beautiful day here in Guam, and I will be bringing you a lot more from Guam over the next week, because there's some very cool, not just history, but current event stuff to learn from the island of Guam. And we'll be reporting here, Iwo Jima, Saipan, and Tinian on this trip. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that, folks. Very, very cool. Iran is looking to buy time, says Helen, and you are completely right about that. And that is exactly what Russia is doing. That is exactly what China is doing. That is exactly what Iran is doing. They are not, they have no interest in negotiating peace. These are barbaric regimes. They are uncivilized regimes. They are not reasonable people, and you cannot reason with reasonable people. So if you can't reason with them, then all of the machinations, all of the theater that they are doing to look reasonable is purely performative. And that's all they're doing, is they're just performing for the West. And in the meantime, they're continuing to prepare, continuing to try to, do damage to the West by advancing their own interests. Eventually, someday, somebody is going to have the stones to go hard against Iran. And that is going to destabilize the region over there because Iran controls a lot of stuff in that region. But it's time. I mean, it's time. If Israel is serious about making its people safe, if Israel is serious about ending the threats against it for all time, then going after Iran is one of those things that is going to happen. Okay. So what is this? Who's this person that keeps saying Ranger reboot? I don't know what you're talking about, Bobby. Paul Clement says, how many vets were on the flight? A lot. There were a lot of vets on the flight. And when we got here last night, there were several 100-plus-year-old veterans of the Battle of Iwo Jima that were there. I didn't get a chance to talk to any of them, but I'm going to go over and meet with them this afternoon. And we're going to start setting up interviews with those guys. It's going to be pretty awesome. I love meeting those old veterans. Why did the ICC issue arrest warrants for Benjamin Milikowski? I don't know who Benjamin Milikowski is. Sorry. Why? Rodney keeps asking that question, but I don't know who you're talking about. I'm shocked Trump thinks he can reason with them. Well, Trump just wants really badly to be seen as a peacemaker, and good for him for doing that. We don't want a president who just wants to bomb everybody. That would be really bad. So it's okay if we have hawkish people under the president, but I think the president should be the ultimate peacemaker, and I think that he's fulfilling that role. And we need that sort of tension between our leadership. But eventually, Trump is going to have to take kinetic action if he wants to be taken seriously, if he keeps talking like he is. Now, John says J.D. Vance was complaining about most of the ship traffic through the Suez Canal is European commerce, and he wondered why we felt it was necessary to spend millions of dollars on the Houthis. That's true, understandable, but the reason that he's saying this is because he doesn't understand the wider picture, the bigger picture. If I was Pete Hegseth and he came to me, J.D. Vance came to me and said, why do we need to bomb the Houthis? They're stopping traffic to Europe, not to the United States by and large. So it's not really affecting Americans that much directly. I would say you're wrong about that, Mr. Vice President, because of the message that it is sending. And that message that it's sending is that the United States is weak. We cannot maintain freedom of navigation on the high seas, and that will have ripple effects throughout the globe. And if we get to the point where every ship has got to have a destroyer next to it in order to navigate the high seas because there's so much piracy and so much violence going on from every country around the world, because we look, for the last 70 years, the United States has been guaranteeing that safety on the high seas. And that's part of why America is as prosperous as we are, because it has made so many products so much cheaper that we can have a much higher standard of living in the United States and, oh, by the way, around the world. It helps the entire planet. So it is self-serving in a way, but that's kind of how doing the right thing usually works. Doing the right thing is sometimes costly, but the ultimate benefits outweigh the costs, not just for you, but for everybody around you. And that's why it's important to do the right thing, even if it is costly. And so that would be my advice to J.D. Vance, is that you're thinking far too short term. You're thinking far too narrow. Your understanding has got to broaden out. If you're going to be a leader of the free world, you got to understand that helping our allies helps America. That's why we have allies. That's what allies are all about, is that we help them, they help us. If we're going to refuse to help our allies when they are being targeted, when they are in need, then there's no way we could ever expect our allies to come to our defense if we ever need it. Okay? And that is, yeah, so Seth is saying they aren't our allies. See, this is that anti-globalist thinking. Look, I'm no globalist. I don't believe that, we need to be doing everything for just other people around the world, but we do exist on this globe. And so bringing peace around the globe ensuring peace of freedom of navigation on the high seas is important for America, just like it's important for everybody else in the world. And the mere fact that other people benefit from the things that we do does not mean that it's not a benefit to us. And look, that you just got to understand that. And if our leadership doesn't understand that, then ultimately we are hurting America. We are hurting our own ability to grow and to be prosperous. Oh, okay. So Rodney is saying real name Benjamin Netanyahu is Milikowski. Yeah, that I've never heard that before. And the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu because the ICC is a bunch of leftist morons, and it's not even worth talking about because they're irrelevant. The ICC is irrelevant. They've made themselves irrelevant. What is your thoughts on fixing Iran's doors on their weapons bunkers so they can't get them open for a long time? You mean by dropping ordnance on those doors? Well, we could drop ordnance on them, and that may be what we are relegated to because we're not going to put troops on the ground in Iran. That's not going to happen ever. We're just not going to do it. Nobody in America has the stomach for that. And so B, the only thing that's left to us if we're going to strike Iran is to try to collapse the entryways to those deep underground bunkers. Likely we don't even, there are entrances or even entire bunkers that we don't know anything about. And likely they have plans in place to do something about it if we were to collapse the entrances to those bunkers. So they've got heavy machinery on site ready to start digging those things out as soon as we bomb them. Okay. Okay. So there you go. Chuck is Ryan Reynolds when he's at home. Okay, folks, we got 3,700 people online. I just posted a video of Palestinians in Gaza surrendering to IDF forces, waving the white flag. You can go over to chuckholton.com and see that. I would highly recommend that you go there and subscribe or even sign up as a supporter to support the work that we're doing around the globe. And we're helping people in need wherever we go. That's thanks to you and your donations over there. And that's the only, the best place if you want to try to help, to help our reporting. If you want to support our reporting, that's the best place to do it, is over at chuckholton.com. We're also doing lives over there for supporters and subscribers only. We are doing, we're putting up bonus content over there. My books, and I've got 11 books in print, 65 documentaries. You can get access to a lot of that work over there at chuckholton.com. So please go and support us over there. That would mean a lot to me. But if you're not subscribed to the channel, then why not? I mean, if it doesn't cost you anything, you can get notified when we're going to go live. And we got a lot of really good stuff coming very soon. So I highly recommend that you do that. So someone asked if you were related to Ryan. No, I'm not related to Ryan. Ben-Gvir as head of police, thoughts with Temple Mount. That's a whole nother podcast. We'll do that later. Help the Kurds with Turkey. Yes, we should help the Kurds with Turkey. It's free to subscribe at chuckholton.com. So please go subscribe. You can, for $9 a month, buy me a coffee, help me by becoming a supporter over there. And that is a big deal for us. That helps sort of future-proof our lives in case YouTube decides to cut us off, which very well may happen. You just never know. YouTube's kind of hard to predict that way. Okay, we've got a lot of good stuff coming. That's all I've got for right now. Thank you for watching. And again, make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. So we'll see you next time. And God bless you. All right, we'll see you later.